their own animal byproducts. We're based in Alexandria, Virginia, which is just outside Washington, D.C. We also have offices in Mexico City and Hong Kong, and market consultants all over the globe. Our organization's mission is to advocate for sustainable food supply chain, public health, and the environment by producing and promoting rendered products and services. So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? First and foremost, our job is to advocate for and safeguard the interests of the rendering industry. NARA emphasizes a spirit of cooperation and scientific support with our federal agency partners and legislators so that they can better understand the rendering industry, our products, and the economic and environmental contributions our industry makes. NARA may suggest new protocols in food and feed safety, and we illustrate these ideas with members' voluntary efforts or industry best practices in such areas as the Rendering Code of Practice and microbiological monitoring. The association also works hard to facilitate trade and access new markets for rendered products. We conduct technical seminars and feeding trials. We participate in trade shows and bring foreign buyers to the United States. We also provide subject matter expertise and other services to U.S. suppliers and foreign buyers, such as assistance with facility registrations, and we help navigate government bureaucracy to eliminate artificial and non-tariff trade barriers. The association also monitors new and existing export opportunities and emerging trade patterns. This map shows where we have members located across the United States. The red triangles represent our integrated packer renderers, and the blue stars are our independent renderers. And on this map, you can see we also have a number of members in Canada. What is rendering? Well, the short answer is rendering is recycling, because roughly 50% of an animal is considered inedible by North American standards. This leaves a lot of leftover material, or we like to call it the meat that we don't eat, that would wind up as food waste if it were not for rendering. We reclaim this otherwise wasted material like protein, bone, fat, etc., as well as use cooking oil from restaurants and safely and hygienically and sustainably process it into rendered material for use in new products so nothing is wasted. Sometimes it's important to take a step back. A look at these old-timey photos really underscores some of our rich history that the industry is built on. In the 1800s, we can see that the value capture was on hides and tallow. And by the 1930s, the renderers in the United States were realizing the value in coming together for advocacy efforts to safeguard the interests of the industry. Rendering has a legacy of wasting nothing. Rendering has existed for centuries, originally largely for soap and candle making, mostly done in a big kettle over an open fire. There were further developments to the rendering process in the 19th century when we began producing both edible and inedible products. Today's operations are really sophisticated and span the agri-food, oleochemical, and energy sectors. Rendered products are more than just food. They're products that surround us every day. The big four rendered product markets are pet food, animal, aquaculture feed, fuel, oleochemical products, and fertilizers. We also have gel bones, which are essentially rendered bone chips used in gel caps for dietary supplements, pharmaceuticals, film, gelatin, gummy bears, etc. And then there's the fat, which can be either a feed ingredient or an ingredient for biorenewable diesel and household and other consumer products. Here are a few products you might recognize. Rendered fats alone are used in the production of a lot of things you probably already used this morning when you got ready for the day, like soap, shaving cream, lotions, perfume, cosmetics. And then there's the laundry detergent and fabric softener you used on your outfit today, and a whole bunch of products that you would need to tackle your home and automotive to-do list. Another important part of our industry is the used cooking oil segment. Our members collect used cooking oil from restaurants, and it's processed into ingredients for animal feed or biodiesel or renewable fuel, taking that waste and turning it into worth. So what is so sustainable about rendering? The short answer is there are a lot of leftovers. More than 56 billion pounds of raw material from animal agriculture become rendering raw material in the United States, and more than 6 billion pounds are processed in Canada. That's a whole lot of leftovers that rendering reclaims and transforms into useful other products. You can see here by species how much of the animal is considered inedible by North American standards. And that material is just too good to waste. We're able to recycle 99% of this unwanted meat, and instead of wasting these leftovers through other disposal methods, we're able to turn waste into profit. This is the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's food recovery hierarchy. This inverted triangle shows the most preferred methods of food recovery on top, starting with reducing surplus food production. And on bottom is the least preferred method of landfilling or incinerating food as the method of disposal of last resort. You can see rendering's sweet spot is right there in the middle because we divert food into animal feed and transform waste oils into fuel and other industrial uses. In 2021, two of my colleagues here at the North American Renderers Association collaborated to write an article that was published in Animal Frontiers magazine. Essentially, if rendering had a sustainability playbook, this 34-page article would be it. Some of the publication's main takeaways are that consumers are really unaware of how agriculture and livestock provide more than just food, and that rendering prevents waste in animal production systems by utilizing byproducts from the production of meat. We also show how rendering is recycling or upcycling and supports the three pillars of sustainability: environmental, social, and economic. Rendering is an essential part of the animal feed system and a lot of products that consumers use every single day. One of the key highlights is that extending the utilization of rendered products in animal food would actually improve sustainability across the board. Rendering directly supports environmental sustainability by utilizing byproducts that would otherwise be treated as food waste and divert it from landfills and less desirable disposal methods. Let's just take a few minutes to take a look at some examples of how rendering supports the three main pillars of sustainability. Here I've included a few different ways to look at the three pillars graphically. The pillars represent the key elements of environmental, social, and economic sustainability. Some like to call it the three-legged stool, but these diagrams show the crossover or interdependence and a common or aligned purpose. Let's first start with environmental sustainability. Rendering protects the environment from the high greenhouse gas emissions of other disposal methods. It reduces energy and water consumption, minimizes environmental impacts like climate change from animal agriculture, and reduces the rendering industry's footprint by using modern trucking fleets and computer-controlled cookers. Rendering reclaims billions of gallons of water that would otherwise be wasted or contaminated. The process improves water quality, naturally releasing water back into the environment through evaporation or by returning it to streams and rivers according to federal, state, and local water standards. Rendering also helps improve water quality because renderers pick up used cooking oil and thereby save municipal sewer and wastewater systems from becoming clogged, preventing millions of dollars in damage, repairs, and compromised water quality. Rendering makes a huge contribution to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Rendering reduces GHG by 72% and fossil fuel use by 80% when compared to petroleum diesel. An average rendering plant sequesters 5 times more greenhouse gas emissions from the environment, such as carbon dioxide, than it emits. Some plants are even more efficient than that. Rendering avoids at least 90% of the potential greenhouse gas emissions compared with industrial composting. The rendering industry is the greenhouse gas reduction equivalent of taking 18.5 million cars off the road each and every year. Another impressive statistic is that if all rendered products were sent to the landfill, All available space would be used in 4 years. Now let's turn our attention towards social sustainability. Rendering supports social sustainability because it's a very community-focused industry with incredibly high rates of employee retention. The average rendering plant provides about 100 good jobs with competitive pay and benefits. Now these are stable jobs, often in smaller communities and rural areas. It's important to note that unlike in other sectors, these jobs can't be exported due to the raw and perishable nature of the material that rendering reclaims. Rendering workers are highly skilled and competitively compensated. Employees get disability insurance, training and job-related certifications, educational benefits, and retirement benefits through a 401k program with a company match. Rendering plant owners invest in improvements to ensure the sustainability of their operations and the communities around them. Rendering is a highly regulated industry, and safety is always the top priority for workers and the products we produce. Rendering is compliant with food safety regulations and voluntary standards. Each rendering plant develops its own food safety plan designed to foresee and prevent hazards. Control systems are constantly monitored to ensure that cooking temperatures are kept at an appropriate level to kill bacteria and control pathogens and microbial contamination. Plants run sophisticated sanitation and biosecurity programs. We have stringent testing protocols and strict record keeping, followed by third-party audits to ensure all the preventive controls, verification, and validation protocols are followed to ensure product safety. These voluntary programs were implemented by renderers long before the Food and Drug Administration made these steps mandatory. So rendering really has been leading the way in safety and social sustainability for decades. I chose to put sustainable pet food under the social pillar because companion animals contribute so much to our human health and wellness. And I speak from personal experience because those are my 2 dogs, Lulu and Roxy. They keep us company, we exercise together, give lots of kisses and snuggles, and I feed them a diet that includes rendered animal protein and fat because it's what they crave because of its nutritional content. It's a real win-win because rendering helps reduce food waste and our pets just plain like it. Next, I'm just going to talk briefly about economic sustainability. The rendering industry is sustainable and financially stable with an annual contribution of more than $10 billion to our economy. Of course, there's some expected crossover with the social pillar here when you consider the jobs, benefits, and economic activity that rendering is responsible for. I'll take just a moment to comment on some key drivers in the fats market. Last year, the United States became a net importer of tallow for the first time. In the slide on the left, you can see where we've plotted the introduction of biomass-based diesel to the renewable fuel standard in 2007. And then the introduction of our first state low-carbon fuel standard in the United States in California in 2011. Steadily since then, we've exported less and less rendered fats and now have become a net importer of tallow. On the right, you can see how we were steadily importing tallow from Canada and then eventually started importing from Australia. And last year, there were other players shipping to the US, including New Zealand, Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, and others. This shifting demand and increase in prices of fats has been really good for renderers, but it has created some friction with key customers like the pet food industry. Now let's take note of some messaging trends that we've seen developing. The photo on the left is an advocacy campaign that the Pet Food Institute started promoting at their Pet Food Forum in Kansas City this year. The button reads, "Take action today. Tell Congress to feed people and pets first." Well, we were prepared to do some myth busting when we had our members visiting Washington, D.C. this summer. But we pretty quickly discovered that this messaging wasn't really getting any traction. So at least for now, we found that the food and fuel messaging seems to be more successful. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We can do both. Now I just wanted to highlight the growth in our protein markets. They've been more reasonable than the fat markets and largely driven by exports. As you can see from this trend line, since 2011, exports of protein have increased by 158%. NARA spends a lot of its time educating stakeholders about rendering, and we take a lot of pride that our industry really is the sustainability industry. NARA has taken a leadership role on several multi-stakeholder advocacy initiatives like the SPG Coalition, which was started in 2021, as a way to collect and document the way industries are contributing to sustainable productivity growth. The U.S. Sustainability Alliance is something that I helped create in 2012 when I was still with the U.S. soybean industry. It's an initiative that focuses on correcting some of the misconceptions about U.S. agriculture in Europe. We have 23 different ag export groups involved, and we try to describe each industry's unique approach to establishing sustainability criteria. And finally, we're participating in a life cycle assessment of every segment of the supply chain, from the animals in the field all the way through to the leather used by the textile and fashion industry. NARA is recognized as a leader in agricultural sustainability. Pictured here, you see our president and CEO, Kent Swisher, who testified this summer before the U.S. Congress Select Committee on Climate Change. The political and policy landscape around climate change has been shifting in recent years. We've seen UN initiatives. The U.S. Department of Agriculture doled out $2.8 billion this year to fund climate-smart initiatives, and more states are implementing their own low-carbon fuel standards and other mandates. NARA follows these issues pretty closely because we want to make sure that rendering's interests are represented and we maintain the freedom to operate. I want to highlight the shift in dialogue around sustainability. Now, 30 years ago, sustainability was first defined in the U.S. Farm Bill in 1990, and then it was focused on environmental sustainability and stewardship of natural resources. Today, we see a shift towards sustainable development, which describes long-term economic well-being on a much broader scale. In 2015, the United Nations adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and these 17 goals on a broad spectrum of topics related to societal advancement, economic growth, and natural resource protection. You can see how the dialogue is now expanding and encompasses things like poverty and gender equity that weren't foreseen 30 years ago when we were focused on environmental sustainability. This article was in the Financial Times a few weeks ago. There's been a lot of coverage about New Zealand proposing radical targets aimed at reducing methane emissions from sheep and cows. Seems pretty unbelievable. But if these kinds of policy proposals can happen in New Zealand, maybe it could happen in North America someday soon. With the policy landscape around sustainability expanding, let's look at what other industries have been doing in response. There are a few different pathways to demonstrating sustainability. Of course, there's the government mandate approach like we just talked about in New Zealand. There are also industry-led protocols. Here I've listed just a few examples, like the U.S. Soy Sustainability Assurance Protocol, the U.S. Roundtable for Responsible Beef, the North American Meat Institute's Protein Pact, and the Corn Sustainability Assurance Protocol. These industries wanted to respond to customers' demands and get ahead of possible mandates by voluntarily collecting data and demonstrating their industry's methods, setting sector targets and goals, and in some cases, even issuing certifications. And the final pathway that is sometimes used are third-party schemes, like the Roundtable for Responsible Soy and the Roundtable for Responsible Palm. Perhaps the most important part of sustainability is demonstrating a commitment to continuous improvement. The rendering industry continues to invest in research to develop new methods and processes to meet the evolving needs of customers. Rendering is always innovating, and we're working to solve evolving energy issues by finding more efficient solutions and economical processing techniques and equipment. Rendering's essential role in waste reduction is likely not on the minds of many consumers, but the companies who make the products the consumers buy are keenly aware. We'll continue our advocacy efforts to educate stakeholders on the sustainability benefits of upcycling rendered material into new goods. Why should we spend all this time even talking about sustainability? I mean, rendering has been practicing sustainability for centuries. It actually is our business model to take waste and turn it into worth. The reality is, the future will require more data and more metrics. Our customers are requiring it. Their downstream customers and consumers are requiring it. Investors certainly are. And we're already seeing governments get involved through incentives and climate change mandates. Rendering has a very strong history. We have good sustainability credentials. I mean, after all, we are the original recyclers. We were green before the color green even became synonymous with environmental stewardship. Now rendering is poised to take it to the next level with data collection, benchmarking, commitments and goals that deliver on proof points to build trust. Rendering is part of the animal food supply chain, and that automatically means that we're part of the discussion about animal agriculture's environmental impact and the carbon footprint of meat. We have a responsibility to better demonstrate rendering's role and how meat production is sustainable now and in the future. We're at a crossroads. Some companies are very invested in sustainability programs, and some are just starting. As an association, our philosophy is that you really don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to start. What I wonder is, will we say sustainability as a differentiator between the different players in the market, or is this an opportunity for us to collaborate? My prediction is that NARA will continue to lead in this space and collaborate with like-minded people and organizations, and educate those who may see the world a little differently than us. Before I conclude, I would like to spend just a few moments highlighting some of the rendering educational materials available on our website. You can learn the facts through our infographics at nara.org. This infographic tells us what it would be like if there was no rendering. We have a number of infographics focused on the issue of sustainability. We also have an award-winning magazine, which you can find at rendermagazine.com. In addition to our magazine, you should check out our blog, where we discuss timely topics, news, community outreach events, and topics like sustainability. We also have a podcast where you can learn everything you didn't know that you didn't know about rendering. You can also find us on social media, and if you're so inclined, please follow us. I want to thank you for your attention to this presentation, and I've provided my contact information in case I can be of any assistance.
Ok, les acabo de pasar a todos los asistentes el correo para que ahí lo tengan, por si lo requieren, así lo requieren. Y vamos a tener, les voy a pasar el link de YouTube, donde pueden escribir las preguntas y ahí se las haremos llegar a Dana, quien las irá respondiendo, o se las pueden hacer directamente a ella, a este correo.
Marcos, antes de cerrar, no sé si me escuchan.
Sí, escucho.
Quisiera dar unas gracias especiales a Nara por el patrocinio que nos están dando. Esto no solo para que se gestione pues, lo que es el firma, sino también que hemos utilizado ese dinero para que muchas personas en países con situaciones críticas, económicas, etcétera, puedan estar en el firma. Ejemplo, Venezuela, Cuba y otras. Así que muchas gracias a Nara y a todos los patrocinadores que nos están apoyando en el firma. Gracias.
Y nos despedimos entonces con este video.
Tiene audio, Marcos, no sé.
Sí, déjame volverlo a compartir. No sé por qué no.
En todo caso, los invitamos al simposio de actualidades en nutrición que va a comenzar dentro de unas 3 horas. 2, a las 3 de la tarde, hora de Perú, Ecuador, Panamá, Colombia.
Esa sesión va a estar muy buena y les queremos hacer la invitación. Conéctense a nuestra página y ahí podrán acceder a esa sesión.
La coordinará la doctora María Teresa Viana, de la Universidad de la Ensenada, en Ensenada, en México, en Baja California. Universidad de Baja California.
Muy bien. Entonces, sin más, nos vemos esta tarde.
Gracias a todos.